Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Remember to Live podcast. I am so excited to have my special guest, Robert H. Johnson Jr., today. He is an award winning DEI strategist, a leadership coach, a best selling author of the book Safe, Seen, Heard, Valued, and now a TEDx speaker. Everyone needs to watch his TEDx talk. We'll get to that in a moment. But first, hello, Robert. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I am super excited to be here. And for all the work and effort that we put into showing up today, your listeners, your community is going to get what I believe is going to be powerful and intentional nuggets. So thank you for having me.
Oh, yes. Yes. Call it in. So I like to start every episode with us just taking a breath and let's get present in this moment that we're here to have this conversation. So let's take a deep breath, bring our bodies to this space because as you know, we spend too much time running around in life and our brain is everywhere else. So I want to be here right now while we're in this conversation together. And to kick us off, I want to ask you the same thing that I ask all my guests. And my first question is, what does it mean to live a life and live one well?
It's such a good question. What does it mean to live life and to live life well? So to me, I think we're born to learn lessons. It's literally a part of our purpose on this earth is to learn lessons to become the person that we need to be to fulfill purpose. And so I
Yes.
believe a life well lived is recognizing that I'm here to not just teach lessons because we tend to be very okay and comfortable with teaching and not always comfortable with being a student. And so a life well lived is a life one remembering that you are to be the student until it is time for you to be the teacher. And even when you're the teacher, you are still constantly
Ah.
learning and growing.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And it's a cycle, right? We're always learning and growing. And then the best way to learn is to teach. And so as we learn these lessons and share these lessons with other people, in hopes that we all kind of make each other a little bit better.
Well said. Well said. That is literally, I think, the purpose of life is what you learn, you teach. And as you teach, you become more comfortable and confident in the thing until it's time for you to move to the next level in the lesson, whether it's life, but it's all life, right? We think personal,
Yeah,
professional, relational, it's still all life.
yeah. And we got to show up to it and we got to do the things that we want to do while we're here. And that's why I'm so excited to talk to you because you're one of the people similar to me who, you did the shoulds, you did the prescribed life, you did the corporate, climbed the ladder, did all of the things, and then made some choices for yourself and started realizing that maybe my life looks a little bit different than what they're telling me it should look like in order for me to feel fulfilled in my purpose and happiness.
Whew, you articulated it a lot better than what it felt going through it, right? But you're right. There was a point in my life in which the edges, and you know this, corporate America has, which again, I enjoyed my experience. I grew from my experience, but the reality is, corporate America's job, the very essence of what it means to be in corporate, is to be shaped, molded and directed into who you are, into who you can become, and you climb the ladder, and this is what that climb looks like. And oh, don't skip a rung on the
Yeah.
ladder because you will not be worthy or valuable. And so, for me, that enlightening moment, that light bulb moment, happened in sort of my mid 30s, almost 40. And I think for most of us, the closer we get to midlife, the more we realize, wow, look where I've come, and then where do I want to go with the rest? And so I was very blessed to build
Yeah.
a diverse career from retail to financial services, climbing up the ladder in financial services. And then I won't say one day, over the course of a year or two, I got clearer and clearer that what I love about this work, which is the people building, engaging, connecting, I want to do more of that. And so I began to make shifts and pivots to direct me to doing and living the purpose.
I love that. And I think one of maybe your biggest takeaways in that journey led you to your recent TEDx talk and this idea of the little L, which I think is huge in corporate, but also in life. So, do you want to share a little bit more about that concept and what made you um, want to kind of help others understand this idea and the power of it?
Yeah, I was literally just having a conversation with a family member recently about the little L without calling it the little L. And so basically, the little L is the reminder that we all are leaders. And quite often we wait for positions to deem us worthy of being a leader, when the
Mm,
reality is you, with your little self, have the power, the capacity to stand up, step up, and speak out in a positive way to affect positive change for yourself, for your family, for your community, for the workplace, and most certainly the world. And so once I realized, wow, I have power, right? What am I going to do with it
mm-hmm.
versus how am I being allowed to use it? And we wait for permission versus taking action or seizing control. And so for me, my big bold mission is to inspire people through this talk, the power of the little L, to remember, whether it's in your family, whether it's in your community, whether it's in your work, but most certainly in this world, you have been given a set of abilities, passions, values, things that you stand on, that you have an obligation, not just an opportunity to live out. And so I just hope when people listen to the talk, they take the
Mm-hmm.
action, which are the three steps to get clear on what your little L, and by the way, little L is little leader. We all have
Mm-hmm.
leadership qualities and capacity. It's just that we can't wait on the big L, positional leaders, to give us power to operate in our personal, right, leadership capacity.
Yeah. Yeah. And, it can be a journey and it can sometimes feel hard to figure out, like, how do I find my space in a place that might have so much structure and, like, step by step, this is how you get to the top. You're being told, oh, to be a leader, you have to A, manage people, make it like have a big team, have a certain title with certain letters behind your name. But like the same thing I coach my clients on is like leadership starts with self and you can lead from where you are. And leadership is more about impact and influence than it is number of direct reports or the letters behind your name or the size of the P&L that you manage, right? You can be a leader in any organization or in any space that you're in just by how you show up in that space. So what would you say to someone who's struggling right now in their journey to feel like they don't have the power to make the change or the impact that they would like, or they see that they kind of feel like stuck in the system?
Yeah, I would share this story that I hope will illuminate the answer to your question. And I didn't share this in the talk, so you're getting some insider information, all of your
Oh, yes.
listeners. So when I was mm, middle of my career, there was something in me that said, at the time I was living in Chicago and I had relocated to Chicago from Atlanta. So my family was in Atlanta, even though we're originally
Mm,
from Miami, we migrated north. I was building a great career because I was doing what I love to do. I was doing what I was curious about, passionate about, and willing to be a
yeah.
student at, right? So that's almost the first thing.
Hmm.
You got to be
Hmm.
willing to be a student of what does power look like? What does leadership look like? And
Mm,
sometimes you see it in your immediate view, sometimes it's in the peripheral view, sometimes it's in a distant view. But I
right.
remember I made a decision to move back to Atlanta, and I had a conversation with a leader. And she, when I told her, hey, I'm going to be leaving Chicago, my family's in Atlanta, and I feel it's time for me to head back south. She said something that I'll never forget. She said, Robert, I think that's such a junior move.
Mm,
It stung because she was someone that I trusted, who had enabled my success, right? But what
hmm.
I want you to realize is the moment you step outside of someone's designated role for you, someone's ambition and hope
Mm,
for you, that is the first example of your taking ownership of your little L. You have to
Mm-hmm.
resist fitting in. You have to resist the path that's been blazed. And as Robert Frost says, I believe, taking the path that isn't there and creating it. And so that for me was the first recognition. Oh, you are used to saying
Mm.
yes. People are accustomed to you saying
Yes.
yes because they think, the second point, they think your definition of success is the same as theirs. And my definition of
Yes.
success became more about impacting people, not just earning a great income. And guess
Right.
what? Both things can be true. When you make
Mm-hmm.
impacting people your priority, you'll always, as they say, great people will always have an opportunity, right? I
Yeah. Yeah.
firmly believe that. So, for me and for anyone out there listening, if you are in a place in your life where you are accustomed to saying yes and going along because you feel like it's what you have to do, and maybe it's what you wanted to do, but now you're in a place where I no longer want to do that. That doesn't
Mm-hmm.
serve my future self. Do
Yeah.
your current self the honor of acknowledging that and make
Mm-hmm.
decisions that align with it.
Yeah. And just even think about just the phrase that she said to you. That's such a junior move that you want to go back to a space and a place where you have community and family and you can thrive, as if we're supposed to sacrifice that to seem like we have more leadership qualities, right? As if there's one way and one way to do things. And if you don't do it, then you're not on the right path, which I think it's so important that we recognize the power of self leadership, and
Mm,
that when we make these bold moves, we're actually giving others permission to
to
do the
do
same.
to do the same, and let's make it even more personal. Let's make it about family, because there's someone out there listening, like me, like you, who maybe the first time that they will or did demonstrate the power of their little L is they decided to finish high school. They decided to go to college. They decided to
Mm-hmm.
manage money differently. They decided to treat people differently. They decided to break a generational cycle in their family that they know they've been called to do. That's another thing about
Mm.
owning your little L. You will get clearer and clearer the more you go, the more curious you are about who you are meant to be in this world, right? You will get more
Mm-hmm.
clear because everybody's not called to be the CEO of a company. Everybody's not called to be an
Right.
entrepreneur, but everyone is called to do something to change positively the trajectory of their life and therefore their family, their friends, their community.
Yeah.
Because you do realize when you lean into your little leadership power, you set the example as you said, right? You help someone
Mm-hmm.
see, wow, if
Yeah.
Robert can do that, I can do that. You
Mm-hmm.
create the space for people to be curious about their own little L power when you walk step by step until you can run in your own little
Yeah.
L power.
Oh, I love that. One of the things I talk about a lot is how do we put the living back into making a living, right? And a lot of these choices are about how do we want to live our lives? And there's not one way. Like sometimes there's a lot of people who feel like, oh, there's the corporate camp and the entrepreneurial camp. And it's like, well, those aren't the only two ways to make a living in the world. Ask my son who makes his living off of TikTok. Like things still need to be built. People still like to be outside and use their hands. Like there's a lot of different ways to make a living in the world. And I think the key to what you're trying to help people understand how to do is find alignment with themselves.
Yeah.
And through that alignment, then showing others that you can live in a way that allows you to thrive, that allows you to be happy, that doesn't build a big old pile of regrets at the end of this thing, wishing you would have made different choices earlier.
Yeah, you said it so very well. We only get one thing called life from my personal belief system, right? And I tell people all the time, I tell God this. I say, God, when I do leave, you're going to say he burned that faith thing to the ground, because every
Mm,
step that we make every day outside of our houses, outside of our homes, outside of our comfort zone is a step of faith. Even when you get in your car to go to the grocery store, you believe it's going to
mhm,
start. You believe it's going to get you there. You believe you're
mm.
going to get there safely. You believe you're going to find what you want. You believe you're going to get back in your car. You believe you're going to make it back to your apartment, and you're going to
Yeah.
do what you say you're going to do. So to seize the power of your little L, you have to have faith that I believe I'm supposed to be doing this, and life will line up for me in the way that it needs to
Mhm.
ensure that I fulfill it. But it's not going to happen by
Yeah.
accident.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit more about faith. I think that that word can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people, right? And if we just use the word alone in the example that you gave of, I think sometimes people might not even realize, like when I wake up and get out of bed and walk down to my car, that is an act of faith. Thinking that when you push the button, I was going to say put the key in, but we don't really do that anymore. That's when I push the button, the car's going to start. When I, like when
Yeah.
I flip this light switch, the light's going to come on, and like once in a while it doesn't, but you don't automatically assume it's not going to happen. So if we walk through our days with this much faith in all of the little things, why are we so afraid to have faith in the big things?
Uh, listen, from my faith and my belief system, it says all I have to do is have a mustard seed of faith. A mustard
Mm,
seed of faith to yield a harvest that will last beyond me. And when I tell everyone that's listening this afternoon, this evening, this morning, wherever you might be, the middle of the night listening to this, is there's one thing that you can do that's outside of your comfort zone, that's an intentional act of faith, right? Faith is
mm, mm-hmm.
is conscious and unconscious, right? It's kind of like bias if we're talking about the people business,
Yeah.
right? But
Mm-hmm.
faith is an adjective. It's not a noun. My sister's middle name is Faith, right? So, but faith to me is the actions that we take that align what we believe to what we believe the outcome will be of what we believe. If I believe I'm going to be the
Mm,
first person in my family to graduate college, life will begin to line up the steps
mm,
so that I can do that. But
yeah.
it's not going to line up if I don't own the belief, if I don't speak the belief, and then if I don't take the steps to get good grades, to apply for college, to be flexible, to build the relationships. All of these things are steps and actions of faith. If
Mm,
here's the another great example of faith. When you approach someone you're interested in, most would say that's rejection or acceptance. But that's an act of faith that this is someone that I would like to get to know better. I
mm,
believe this is
mm-hmm.
someone I would like to get to know better, right? And, if it is and they reciprocate, great. If it's not and they reject me, great. Because
Right.
the real thing that I'm having faith is that there is someone out there that is meant for me, that I'm meant to
Mm,
build a life with. Do you see what I did there? Sometimes we get focused
yes.
on the specific thing instead of faith being a journey and a process to get us and attract to us the very thing we not just want, but that we need.
Mm, yes. And I love how you put that in the faith is in the action, right? And the actions are what you do every day because so many of us have this someday list. Someday or one day list. One day I'll do that, or someday I want to do this, or someday I'm going to be that, or after X, after I reach X, after I do Y. And we keep all these things in the future as if we just don't take any action or do anything towards it, it'll magically happen one day. When we don't, none of us know how many days we have or how much life is promised to us. And that's one of the main reasons I wrote or started doing this podcast is because watching my mom come face to face with it, there is a such thing as too late, right? Like someday is never promised. So how do we take these little acts of faith, these little actions, these little steps every day to start creating the life we want right now? Because end of life regrets is an epidemic.
Oh my
Like
goodness.
it's
Say
it's it's
that
an
again.
epidemic and we don't we don't talk about it enough, right? We don't want to get to the end of this life wishing we had showed up to it no longer having a chance to.
That is the power of the little L. It is the person that
Mm,
recognizes that one of the most finite things is time, and
mm,
where I invest that time, who I invest that time with, how I invest that time, whether it's my vocation, my relationships, I have to make the decisions, right, to allocate the time in the right places to get to where I believe, going back to faith, I am supposed to be, or we can be as a community, or we can be as a workplace, let alone in the world. That's why I tie faith to the power of your little L, because it's one thing to recognize that I have power. It's another thing to
yeah.
not allow imposter syndrome or being undervalued, underappreciated, undercompensated distract you from actually walking in the
Mm,
power of the little leader. Because guess what? Every big L leader that does it well, that is one of the greats, they started first walking in their little L power
mm,
by
yeah.
faith.
Yes. Yes. And I want to touch back on like when we step into that power, how we not only give other people permission to, but how we start to hold space for others. Because I know a lot of the work you do is around not only how we hold space for ourselves and recognize our own value and our self worth, but how we create these spaces so others can thrive as well.
Yeah, it's I was just talking to someone about this recently about why I do what I do and why I approach the work the way that I approach it. One, someone made space for me. And
Mm,
and anyone that ever made space for me, not every one of them looked like me, right? So
right.
making space also means not thinking that the thing is going to, again, look like what you expect it to look like when you actually, get the help, the support, the opportunity. So that's always important for me to call out too, is that, the power of your little L is not in a silo. It's not relegated to a
Yeah.
specific gender, age, and so or orientation or identity. So for me, I make space because someone made space for me. I make space because I don't have the best ideas. I have an idea, but if I open up the
Hmm.
space to folks from different backgrounds with different perspectives and different experiences, we're going to walk away from the table with the best,
Mm,
idea, the most innovative idea. And guess what? We're going to feel better about it, which is where they use the word in corporate America a lot, but they don't deliver the experience of collaboration. Collaboration
mm,
isn't, you know, well, Miss Canty, you really have a phenomenal idea, keeping it in the corporate context, right? Because you
yeah.
have an amazing story and you've led and done phenomenal things at very senior levels. And so people respected you because of your position sometimes, because they don't know you as a person, right? And so
Hmm.
some of the
Hmm.
spaces that you were allowed to enter were based on your big L positional title, but you leverage those spaces to create space for
Yes.
others. And
Yes.
go
Yes.
ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I was saying yes, that's so true. And that's also one of the reasons I brought improv into work, because once I reached a certain level and I wanted to open up the door and hold space for others, people don't recognize that all these things that companies want, right? We need you to be creative. We need you to be innovative. We need new ideas. We need to figure out how to differentiate ourselves in the market. All of these things require creativity, fresh ideas, innovation, but that doesn't come from a bunch of people sitting at the table with the same background in similar ideas. It
Yeah.
comes from putting a bunch of people at the table who have very different lived experiences, who have very different backgrounds, who have different ways of thinking, and then utilizing the concept of yes and. So when someone puts an idea out there, we're not instantly negating it because we don't accept anything that doesn't match our own idea, but we're looking at that idea and exploring it and saying, okay, yes, and how could I add to that? How could I take a piece of my lived experience and my knowledge and my expertise and see if we can improve on that idea? And when you get a table full of people all adding value in that way, that's real collaboration. That's where real innovation comes from. That's how you succeed. Everyone gets to participate and belong and thrive.
Yeah. plus 1,000 to everything that you said, right? And so for me, that's why as a leader, once I recognize that, and this is going back mid 2000s, and listen, I'm a big old age, not old, I'm a big age of 47. So I have a 25 plus year career at this time, where 2018 plus of those years were corporate America, and six owning my business, but they're all filled with unique experiences, all 25 of my career
Hmm.
years in my career. Once I recognize, I don't care who you are, and I want to speak transparently. I heard someone say, "I'm gonna speak honestly." Well, what's the alternative, right? So, but transparency and honesty are two
Hmm.
different things, right?
Yeah.
For me, because I've seen women, in particular Black women, my mother, her mother, my cousins, colleagues be undervalued, underappreciated. I have a purpose and a calling to advocate, sponsor, mentor, and ally for women, all women, in particular, and especially Black women, because
Hmm.
I see what the effect of the marginalization, right?
Hmm.
Being
Hmm.
undervalued and underappreciated and underleveled and under all the things, the impact of that on the economics,
Yes.
right? There's an
Yes.
economic impact for Black women in the workplace who make, I believe it's around 63 cents or so for every dollar that a
Hmm.
white man makes. This isn't a
Hmm.
conversation about breaking the eliminating the pay equity gap, but for me, it's a part of my mission. If I can
Hmm.
create an opportunity for a woman who is ready, has been ready, been set, is just waiting for the opportunity to go, I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
If I can mentor, or coach, what am I losing? I'm only
Yeah.
gaining because I'm helping you, enabling. I'm not helping, I'm enabling what's already there. So for me, I
Yes.
make space because I've seen in my life, personally and even positionally, professionally, too many underrepresented groups, particularly women and particularly Black women, continue to be asked to do more without being reciprocated with the more in economic value.
Hmm. Yes. Yeah. We see that all the time as being someone who's been a double only in a lot of spaces in my life in corporate. Um, that's real. It's a real thing. And you make me think of, so my co-founder for Shift to Play, who's a Black man who had a 20-year career in marketing similar to me, and we both reached quote unquote the top of the ladder, right? And one of the things we had a real conversation about before leaving corporate was the fear of giving up the spot. We felt this immense responsibility of, oh, I got the spot. And if I leave, it's not going to go to someone like me. And so I think people don't recognize that there's also this pressure of, even if you decide you want to move on or you want to do something else with your life, we have to stop and think about how much it means to even have this spot
Yeah.
and not give it up, and how we're carrying this weight of, not only am I working on being successful in my own career and my own life, but now I feel like I've opened a door that I need to stand here and hold and make sure that it doesn't close again. And so I appreciate the fact that you called that out, and that this is part of the work that you do, and that you care so much about it. And knowing you've experienced your own fair share as a Black man in this country, it just is what it is. We're going to speak transparently, as you said. There are things that we go through that make this faith and resilience mean even more.
Corinne, what matters so much about what you said is is an experience I think everyone should have, but unfortunately, there's only a small few people that will hold VP level positions or director plus positions, just based on where we are as a country, if not a world, based on where we're,
Mm-hmm.
what the future potentially looks like. But it doesn't mean that you stop. It doesn't mean that you stop
Mm-hmm.
persisting. It doesn't mean that you um, don't give up the position, because I've had to think of that myself. Um, do I leave this when this has been such a gateway, entryway for folks who deserve the opportunity?
Yes.
but wouldn't have the voice at the table, wouldn't have someone in the room advocating for them. But here's my belief is that when it's time for you to move forward, you will feel it here before it makes
Mm-hmm.
sense here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your heart has
Mm-hmm.
to embrace that, you know what, I have fulfilled my little L and big L responsibilities, because the big L is the what is the role and responsibility of the job. The little L
Yeah.
is what are the things not written on the paper that I see that I can influence change, that don't exist, that I can create to be an enabler of sustainment,
Mm.
right? And so
Yeah.
when you can walk away from something knowing you've given it your all, you've spoken up for the right things, that like character and integrity and impact, um, you can walk away knowing this is hard to do, but I
Mm-hmm.
have to believe that I've fulfilled my purpose here and it's time for me to do
Mm-hmm.
that elsewhere. Do you know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
staying in a
Yeah.
corporation for so long, you actually begin to diminish your effect and impact on what you even purpose to do. Because then you get into comfort. I'll be honest. I got to a point where my
Mm-hmm.
in my corporate job, I could do it like this, and I had a great
Yeah.
team. So I circling back to even just how we got here is holding space is essential. Knowing when
Mm-hmm.
to release the space and embrace a new space for yourself is just as critical and important as holding space and creating space for others at the table.
Yes. Yes. I think that's a great segue to talk a little bit more about your book as well.
Safe, seen, heard, and valued. A
Yes.
resource, a guide that I wanted to offer because I believe we all have gifts and talents and ideas and products and services that are offering for the right, community. And for anyone out there listening, you have an idea, you have a tool, you have experience that you can translate into an idea, a book,
Mm-hmm.
a talk, right?
Mm-hmm.
Notice
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about a talk and a book that have similar themes. You don't have to
Yeah.
be radically different in the things that you put out in the world. Get centered into who you are, and you
Mm-hmm.
will create the solutions that help the world to move forward. And so, for me, safe, seen, heard, and valued is a solution to a problem that because I've been able to work with leaders at every level from CEO to front to entry level and recognize challenges exist at all levels.
Yeah.
Um, Psychological safety, it's a big word, but it is lived in the small actions that we take,
Mm.
respecting people, caring for people, listening to people, being curious. And so, safe, seen,
Mm-hmm.
valued, and heard is really, again, a guide that any leader, whether you're aspiring, emerging, or existing, Gen Z or Boomer, can pick up
Mm-hmm.
and say, not only what I should do, but how do I go about doing those things?
Oh, I love that. And as you know, because I did help to coach you a little bit on your
You
TEDx
did.
talk, I feel that people don't recognize that because we're the only ones that can live our lives and we're the only ones that have had our exact lived experience, we all have a voice. We all have a story to tell, and we all have something to contribute to the world. And I think now more than ever, we need to find that voice and we need to be brave in using our voices for the things that we believe in, for the things that, even though we think, oh, I'm not the person to talk about this, everyone's talking about this, no one has your experience or your perspective. And there are billions of people on this planet. And a lot of them are waiting to hear the thing the way you say it for it to click and resonate with them. And too many of us hold it back, right? And we're not only hurting ourselves, but we're hurting the world that could be so much better once we learn to use our voice and amplify it.
Well, let me give you a real live example of that. The book, I wrote the book in January. I didn't release the book until October 7th. I wrote
Mm.
the book in January.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't release it until October. And I can tell,
Mm.
here's why. You really outlined it. I had the curse of comparison. when we compare our lived experience, our offering to the world, whatever our talk, our book, our artwork, when we compare it, Picasso wasn't comparing, himself to whoever of the Michelangelo or
Mm-hmm.
whomever at the time,
Mm-hmm.
right? Think of everyone
Yeah.
who's done something impactful in the world. You know,
Yeah.
they didn't really compare. They were crazy enough to believe that whatever it was that they were, this artwork, this masterpiece they were creating was what the world needed. That's what the power of the little L. You are bold enough to believe that what I am supposed to be speaking up about, standing up for, and even walking out in some instances about is important enough for me to risk it all, right? And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
one day I said, the book is done. I had gotten good feedback about it before I released it, but I was saying, well, it's not 175 pages and, it's not this. But when I read it and when others read it, the biggest piece of feedback, wow, this is so actionable and it's digestible.
Mm-hmm.
One of the reasons I
Mm-hmm.
don't read a lot of books is because I don't have the time. My attention
Mm-hmm.
span is short. And so this
Mm-hmm.
helps me. This is an simple read with applicable techniques and strategies.
Yeah. I mean, we all now unfortunately live in a society that goes way too fast. We live in the distraction society. It's hard to sit down and even feel like we all absentmindedly scroll. We all can't sit still. Like it's really kind of scary when you think about it, because people don't know how to be bored anymore, and that's where you find your imagination. And so we need to get back to discovering what it is in ourselves that we want to share, instead of always consuming what do we want to create. Seth Godin's one of my favorite
Ah,
authors, and he's constantly using the phrase ship your work, because we all have it inside of us, right? We're not meant to just sit here and consume from the time we wake up until the time we go to sleep, right? We are all creators.
yeah,
And the more that we recognize that and realize that, and it doesn't mean we're all going to create big
right.
world changing things, right? The smallest little everyday things can change a life. And if you're
Yes.
changing one life, if you talk to one person and change one life, that matters.
And it matters even more today because I love the word pandemic and epidemic. We're in an
Mm,
epidemic of isolation where people feel the
mm-hmm.
loneliest they've ever felt, yet we have devices that are supposed to connect us unlike we've ever been connected before. And it breaks
Yes.
my heart because I've fallen victim to it. So you mentioned kind of the mindless scrolling and had to ask myself, how am I using this to really connect versus to be a voyeur? Because really, we use social media for voyeurism to peek into the lives.
Yes. Yes. To feel better about our own life. Like, well, my life, I got to find somebody to make me feel better about
Yes,
my life, instead of living our life, right?
how we
Instead of
started this
living it.
call.
Yes.
We got to live our
Yes.
lives today because we don't know when this life will come full circle, right?
Yes.
And you have an obligation to own your little L power in your home, in your community, in your workplace, because that's how you're going to change the world. Here's a simple example of how to demonstrate your little L power. In today's world, where you can walk into a Starbucks or you can walk into a Dunkin' Donuts, I'm not going to start that war with Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts. I'm a Dunkin' Donuts person myself. You can walk into that place and just stand in line patiently or impatiently waiting for your order to take your order,
Mm-hmm.
make your order, and then get your coffee. Or you can make that an experience, engaging
Mm-hmm.
with the person in front of you or the person behind you, the cashier, most certainly asking simple questions like,
Yes.
how are you feeling today? Because you know that how are you doing versus how are you feeling are two different questions that are going to yield you two different
Yeah.
responses. And so if I take the time to care about Corinne and her experience to say, how are you feeling today? If you're having a
Mm-hmm.
bad day, I've really given you permission to say, you know,
Yeah.
I'm all right. But guess what most people will do? They will share a little bit of the negative, quote unquote, or the truth. But then
Mm-hmm.
usually they'll flip and say, but you know what? I'm actually good. Thank
Mm-hmm.
you so much for asking. I've had
Mm-hmm.
so many people that say thank you for asking because most people don't lean into their power to change someone's day that could change that person's perspective and
Yes.
perception about anything for the better.
Yes. And you even make me think of Matt was recently on the podcast with his
Yeah.
talk and his
Yeah.
question of who are you being today, right? Like asking it and asking yourself that when you wake up in the morning and recognizing like the amount of times that like I walk down the street and intentionally smile at everyone, the people who are kind of like, oh, wait, you're not looking at your phone. Like you're looking at me. Like, oh, let me smile back. Like you can just see
Yes.
that people are like, oh, connection. I haven't gotten that in a minute.
That's why I wrote the book and why I did the talk, because people just need to be connected. And we're too often, thank God that's not me, versus, wow, that had to be hard. How can I help you during that?
Yeah.
Simple
Yeah.
question. But people are so
Mm-hmm.
afraid because in the corporate, world, sometimes you can suffer consequences in your attempt to demonstrate
Mm-hmm.
humanity and support and your little L. And here's why I tell my mom told me this the other day. She watched the talk. She said, I watched your talk. I love it. But here's the thing I need you to also let people know. You have learned over your career
Mm-hmm.
to literally speak up, stand up, and walk out of rooms when you know your voice, your power, your impact is not uh, appreciated, recognized, or you're not able to have it. Not everyone has those skills, Robert, or experiences. So
Mm-hmm.
just be mindful that don't just tell people what to do, give them the steps. And that's what the talk does at the end is you got to ask yourself certain questions to understand when, how, but most importantly, why and who am I called
Mm-hmm.
to impact positively when I use the power of my little L. Does that resonate?
Yeah. Yeah, it does. I mean, so many times when I'm coaching people and people are trying to find their purpose and they start talking about what to do, like, oh, like what job they should do, or it's always a doing thing. And I have to stop them and say, your purpose isn't what you do. It's who you be. So
Yeah.
who do you want to be in this world? And when you figure out who you want to be and then how you want to live your life, the answer to everything else gets way easier.
It's so funny because the first question is who am I called to be? How am I called to be who I am supposed to be? And then outward. So you notice
Mm-hmm.
it starts with self,
Yes.
and then how do I do the thing? And then it's outward. So many people are like, I want to change the world, but you haven't identified your how, let alone your why. Passion
Mm-hmm.
is phenomenal, but if you can combine your passion with your skills, your expertise, and the power of your POV, your
Mm-hmm.
perspective, that's how you change the world.
I think that's the best button. That's like the best button for this conversation. And speaking of who we are and who we be, to wrap up the episode, I do have some fun questions just so people can get to know you a little bit more on a personal level. And I just think they're fun. So I'm going to ask them.
Let's do
Uh,
it.
cur- Currently, what's the favorite part of your day?
That's a good question. Currently, the favorite part of my day is at around 7 or 8. It's dark outside at this point, and the
Yeah,
Christmas.
like
Remember when it was dark at
4 or 5.
4 or 5, when it was
Yeah.
just 9 o'clock, getting dark.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, my favorite part of the day is to sit on the couch with my partner, and the tree is up and it's lit, and just to appreciate the beauty of a simple Christmas tree. It brings me joy. It
Mm-hmm.
reminds me of my 8-year-old self who
Yes.
could sit for hours looking at the Christmas tree. So that's my favorite thing to do these days.
Oh, I love it. Joy of the little things, and I'll always tap into your 8-year-old self. They knew
That's
what was up until people told them different, right? We just got to go back there.
that's where your true little L power it resides, is in the 8-year-old you that the world said, ha, stifle.
Yes, yes. So I think maybe the answer to the second question is married to the answer to the first question because the second one is what's your current cozy as we get into this winter season?
Ooh. I love a good, to be honest, first thing in the morning. So it's the opposite. I love a good cup of coffee with
Mm.
probably too much cream and too much syrup, as I try to reduce sugar by having sugar-free cream and sugar-free syrup. But my favorite warm and cozy is just to have that, one of my favorite mugs, coffee cups,
Mm. Hmm.
with a cup of a coffee and one of my many options of creamers.
I love that. Everyone knows I love me a good warm drink. I'm constantly talking about it. I always have one with me, and I always have a mug I like.
I
So we
love
are
that.
definitely going to have to get together at a coffee shop this winter
Yes,
and talk about our new ideas and combine some things that we love.
I love it.
Right now, what's your favorite feel good song?
So my favorite feel good song would be Kendrick Lamar. There's this whole rap beef and battle between Drake and Kendrick Lamar, and in my humble opinion, Kendrick is winning. No, no, no diss to the Drake fans. But what I love about, and I guess I'll have to say two people, Killer Mike and Kendrick, the K's. I
Oh,
don't ask
yeah.
me why. It's just Killer Mike is a phenomenal storyteller of his
Yes, he
real
is.
experiences in his music. So I love Killer Mike, and I love Kendrick Lamar's um, way with words, his delivery, and then the beat. It's just it hypes me up and gives me great energy. So I'll just have to say K and K, Kendrick and Killer Mike. Those are my musical. Uh, I'm huge fans of theirs right now.
Yeah, I love the work that Killer Mike's doing in the community too. It's such a great thing to see. And as someone who started their career in music and who has a son who does music, there's nothing better than a great beat. Nothing
Yeah,
better. You gotta have a good
you
beat,
have a
right?
good beat. It's a rule for
Yes,
life.
yes, it is. Okay, so what's one thing you do now for your 80-year-old self?
For my 80-year-old self, the honest thing that I do now is manage my finances in a way that I
Oh,
didn't grow up learning, if I'm being honest.
mm-hmm,
Because I don't want to be forced to work at 80. I want to
mm-hmm.
be in Maui, or on a beautiful beach somewhere, not doing a thing. So for my 80-year-old self, I am managing my finances, being intentional about saving, budgeting and all of those things.
Amen to that, because right now, as someone who's a caretaker to two elderly people in this country,
Lord, God
y'all
bless
better
you.
y'all gotta understand to listen to this man and prepare those finances because it might not just be you. You never know who else you might need to take care of. So
Well said. Well said. And
that's
just
a whole other
it's a
podcast
whole
episode.
which we need to have because I too am a caregiver to my mother, so I understand half of what you're going.
Yes, yes. Okay, final question. How do you remember to live?
I remember to live by how we started this call, and I've taught it to my nephew who's 2. Let's take some
Mm,
deep breaths. Let's just
mm,
inhale and exhale because
yeah.
that resets your nervous system. Those deep breaths do so much more than just add oxygen to your blood, which
Yes.
increases your energy because you know this as a breathing expert or someone who's a practitioner of this work.
Hmm.
A lot of times people are tired if not feeling exhausted because we take short breaths more than we
Yes.
take deep
Yes.
breaths. And so for
Yes.
me, the reminder that I'm living this gift of life is to take intentional deep breaths throughout the day.
Oh, I love that. Breath is life. Like, breath is the thing that facilitates our life. And it's a free tool that we carry around. I tell people all the time, like when I'm coaching my clients, I'm like, if you're stressed out in that meeting and that person across the table is making you feel like you're going to explode, you know what you can do in that moment? You can breathe. You can breathe right there. And nobody even has to know that you're using your tool. And it's always on you. So I love
I
that.
love that.
Three deep breaths can change your whole day.
Your whole day. And guess what? Some person's life was saved because someone else decided to take deep breaths. Do you know what
Oh,
I mean?
yes. Yes.
Someone's
Yes.
Life was
Yes.
saved, someone's day was not ruined, someone's, positive stayed positive because someone decided to take ownership of their
Yes.
breathing and to
Yes.
regulate. I love
Hmm.
that. I'm so happy we started with that.
Oh, so good. So good. Okay, Robert, tell the people how they can connect with you. Where can they find you?
Well, again, thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor, a privilege, and a pleasure. But I'd love to stay connected. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, Robert H. Johnson Jr. I am on Instagram. You can find me at I am the corporate dropout on Instagram. You can also check out my website, www.rhjconsultinggroup.com. And if anything that you've heard me say, if you've heard Corinne and I discuss today resonates with you, email me. You can email me at info@rhjconsultinggroup.com.
Awesome. I will put all of that in the show notes for everyone as well and let them know where they can connect with you, watch your TED Talk, all the good things. Again, thank you, my friend. This has been an amazing conversation. So happy to have had it with you today.
Thank you so much, and namaste.